Tahm Kench has been getting a lot of attention lately because of his nerfs to the support role and buffs to the top role. I'm supportive of these changes only because it allows me to play support Kench, which I one-tricked for 2 seasons, in the same aggressive manner that I played Tahm Kench top. I'm going to start releasing a bunch of videos on Tahm Kench before they inevitably nerf him and make him useless and we all have to switch to Renekton or something. But before that happens, hopefully I can give as much good advice as I can. I was a Challenger Tahm Kench support one-trick for 2 seasons until I got banned for having some choice words for some people. With that being said, I hope you still choose to accept my advice in spite of the toxicity I had shown in the past if you had ever played with me. I consider myself reformed now and plan to prove it. Before I start with this guide, I'd like to note that this is my first video ever, and I may not be 100% best on explaining things or talking in the best way, but any support would really help me out. I also recently started streaming on Twitch, so I'd appreciate any love you could show me there, link in the description. Anyway, on with the guide. First things first, how do you play in Tahm Kench? There are a lot of different build paths for different matchups and such, but the playstyle is generally the same. Some general tips and tricks for Tahm Kench are that 1, if possible, wait until you have full stacks on them to use your Q, and 2, don't just immediately devour them anytime you have the chance. Playing Tahm Kench is an art and should be treated as such. You should be able to gauge how far they are going to move in what amount of time, and as such be able to get the appropriate amount of fat licks on them before getting the big chomp on them. Your abilities do more damage based on how many stacks you have on them, so naturally in 1v1s you can maximize your damage by waiting to put your abilities on cooldown until they can actually do the maximum amount of damage. Next we will talk about build paths. Note that every build for Tahm Kench should be situational, whereas Akali will almost always build Gunblade first item, or a Yasuo will almost always build Static or PD first item. A Tahm Kench's entire kit is based around the fact that he does big damage while also being unkillable. But if you build full armor against a full AP team, he may do big damage, but he's far from unkillable. Plus, just because you're tanky doesn't mean you can do big damage. When building Tahm Kench for any role, it's always good to keep a 5-1 ratio of health items. Just because he runs on AP doesn't mean you can't build AD on him. That's why my best builds usually come from a Titanic Hydra and Hysteric Scourge Rush, both of which are AD items but allow me to have enough health to still do big damage. I know what you're thinking. Well, if it's a 5-1 ratio of health items, what do we build for the 6th item? The answer is attack speed. Late game, it's going to be crucial to have as much perma-stun as you can on the enemy carries, so attack speed will be crucial. But whether you go Berserker's Greaves, Gensu's, Witsend, or Trinity Force is all up to you or the matchup. For example, if I was up against a Yasuo who is fed, I still want that attack speed, but Ninja Tabbies would help me greatly here. That being said, it would give me more resistances and survivability if instead of building Tabbies and Gensu's, I built Zerks and Randuin's Omen instead. I would still get the much needed attack speed, but instead of wasting a slot of a much tankier item on an attack speed item, I put Zerks there instead, so that I could get the significantly greater defensive power that Randuin's Omen would provide me. But say I'm up against a significant amount of AP, a Kennen top lane, a LeBlanc mid lane, and a Brand bot lane. I need the attack speed for late game, but I also need the magic resist for the entire game. So here I would go Merc Treads, and then build Witsend later, giving me the attack speed I need to stack quickly, the magic resistance I need to survive their heavy AP comp, and a bit of damage onto my auto attacks. Something to note is that itemization is completely up to you. You can run any attack speed item as long as it doesn't get in the way of your resistances, and any defensive items as long as they give you health. If anybody tells you that your build is bad, ignore them. Voidberry ran Victor top with Iceborne Gauntlet and got lapped at, and lo and behold it became a legitimate problem later in the game's lifespan. Try things out and see what works for you, but a good rule of thumb is that if it gives you health, it's good. Anybody who tells you you're trolling if you don't build Titanic or Sunfire into your Righteous Glory every game is probably one game away from demoting back to gold. Now let's talk about rune pages. Some things to note is that in a perfect world, approach velocity would always be used. It allows you to capitalize on licking the enemy laner, and can more often than not be the reason you win lane, especially if you're against a ranged champion or somebody good at disengaging like Garrett or Trin. So, with that in mind, what rune pages are good on Tahm? The best rune pages on Tahm are Grasp of the Undying, Glacial Augment, Phase Rush, and Hail of Blades. You play Grasp when you're against somebody that counters you, or that will be too tanky for you to get fed on, so that you can still scale without the need to get tons of kills. You take Glacial Augment against ranged matchups, or if you're playing support. You take Phase Rush if you're against immobile champs or champions with overbearing slows, and you take Hail of Blades when you're 100% planning on shitting on the enemy laner for the entire game. Play your lane like a lane bully because that's what you are. Deny the enemy farm, kill them over and over again, steal their girl, their car radio, anything you can to harm your enemy laner, and your job is done correctly. So now you're thinking, okay, builds are situational, but how do I win games with him? The best way to treat Tahm Kench is as a reverse Nasus. The longer the game goes on, the stronger Nasus will get until he's virtually unstoppable. With that in mind, the only way to beat a Nasus is to end the game before he outscales everybody. That's the way that Tahm Kench is, but in the opposite direction. The only way to win with Tahm Kench is to end the game before he gets outscaled. Even if you get put up against a better lane bully like Renekton, you can still make plays elsewhere on the map with teleport, and will altogether end up in a better spot at the end of the laning phase so long as you keep your farm up and don't feed. But the longer the game goes on, the less damage Tahm Kench will do comparatively, meaning even if he goes 11-1 in lane against a Garen, by 50 minutes he won't really be able to kill anybody on his own. The enemy tank will be tankier, and the enemy ADCs will have items like Blade of the Ruined King, which will really fuck you up. If you let it get to this point, your team will gain a second support and lose its tank, inevitably making the team fall apart sooner or later. If it comes to a point where you literally cannot end the game fast enough, be prepared to build something like a Knight's Vow or a Locket so that you can be that second support that you have no other choice than to be now. I've had games end well in these cases, but it's never okay to get complacent with your power and draw out the game, because eventually you won't be as powerful anymore. So as long as you play well and play for objectives rather than kills, you too can climb with the Catfish. Now I know what you're thinking, man, this guy is doing a lot of mind reading this video, and you're right. And because of my Fish Wizard powers, I know what you're about to think. But is Tahm Kench really dead as a support now? And the answer is
no, God!
He has, however, shifted from being a Guardian support like Braum, whose sole purpose is to CC the enemy for the ADC and keep the ADC from dying, to now being closer to Zyra or Lux in the sense that he's meant to kill people. A Tahm Kench support who took kills used to be a huge problem for their team, but now, much like a Lux, he can actually make plays if he gets kills. As long as you don't hide behind your ADC, build aggressive items first, like Righteous Glory, instead of immediately rushing Knight's Vow, you can actually punish enemies for doing literally anything. See, in the past, the goal was to focus the ADC and ignore the tank support, but now you give them an ultimatum. Either focus me and die by my ADC's hand, or focus my ADC and die by my tongue. And let me tell you, honey, my tongue is a lot stickier than Ash's hand. The last thing I'm going to address is Tahm Kench jungle. This is definitely a viable option, but only as much as, say, Riven or Tryndamere jungle. If you run Phase Rush and Nimbus Cloak, he has the ability to pop up in the middle of the lane and run the enemy down with Nimbus Cloak, eat them, and then force them to overextend because of Phase Rush. His build path includes Tiamat into Cinderhulk into Titanic, and post 6 has the same gank pressure as, say, a Volibear. That being said, pre-6, unless you run Ghost instead of Flash, which is a viable option in lower yellow, your ganks aren't scary and you can be outrun fairly easily. The issue with this is that from level 1 to 6 is plenty of time for the enemy laner to end the lane for your friendly laner, and because you have a very weak clear speed until you get Tiamat, you often will be getting 6 about half a level behind the enemy jungler, giving plenty of time to make plays and capitalize on your weakness. I've had a good few games where I solo carried as TK jungle, but these are few and far between, and you are ultimately helpless to your team's performance pre-6 if you're in diamond or above. In lower yellow, the enemies overextend and don't place any deep wards, so you can literally just walk up behind them and kill them, but you're going to have a harder time with pre-6 ganks in higher yellow. I hope this has given a fair bit of info to the aspiring Tahm mains out there. I'll be releasing some full gameplay videos soon, so if you're interested in learning more, feel free to subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you dudes later.